And I think we should be live. And hello, everyone from Coffee Kegs in Kriegsspiel. Today on our podcast, we're going to talk about the value of roleplay in Kriegsspiel. I hope I'm coming in loud and clear. I've been having all kinds of computer issues, so I've been messing with my system lately. But the levels and everything on OBS look good. Again, in the comments, if there's any issues, just let me know and we'll work on it. Today, we have a few guests, and I'm going to be switching through some screens. And yeah, you see here there's a picture of an airplane, or the nose art for a B 17, and that's because we've been doing some role play of a bombing campaign, and we're going to talk about that momentarily. Let's see here. Today we have Dave, Jan, and Justin joining us for Coffee Kegs and Kriegsspiel. Why don't you gentlemen say hello? All right. We are. We've got Dave from the UK, and then on the practically the antipode, we've got Justin from Australia, and then we've got Jan. We've got Jan from the target site in Germany for our today's roleplay bomber campaign. Um, we are going to make a mission that goes over his house. So just because, how do you not do that? But I want to talk about roleplay in Kriegspiel, and a lot of people don't know Kriegspiel is the great grandfather of role playing games. It's not just war games; it's also role playing evolves directly from Kriegspiel. Like you can actually, trace the line of descent from Kriegspiel to kind of early Dungeons and Dragons kind of stuff into D&D, and then all of the other role-playing games that people play, like again D&D, Shadowrun. I don't know what there are out there. There's a whole bunch of them now, um, but people don't know that Kriegspiel is the ancestor of role-playing game. But the question is, why role-playing, right? If you're training for war, what difference does pretending that you are a character on a battlefield or in any other scenario make to the whole thing? And in the IKS, that's a great question too, because we're playing Kriegspiel, we're doing these battles. Why the role play? And I think it's because it's a solution to a problem we had pretty early on. And what that problem was, we had this situation where everybody takes all of their blocks and they push them into the middle of the map and they fight with reckless abandon. And they use up their army and nobody cares because next Saturday, at the next Saturday Open Saturday game, you're going to get a fresh army. And so why not go all in every battle? And that's not really historical behavior. So we introduced some role play elements, and I actually have a folder I'll show you. Here we go. I'll show you the Emperor. There we go. From the Vermilion, the Red versus Blue campaign. Looks a lot like me, doesn't it? That's because it is me. I got to roleplay as this fellow. This is a Russian Imperial thing. It was the only image that worked. But when you play a character, I think it changes things. So let's kind of go around to our guests and kind of get their take on this. And let's see here. I don't want to have just my ugly face up here on the screen. I want to vary what you guys see on the screen. I'll show you another one of the bomber arts. There we go. That's a nice one. You want to see the one with the camel? I don't think I have. Okay. Oh, Bad Penny. That's it. Yep, that's it. Go ahead, Justin. Why don't you talk about your thoughts on the role play? We'll start with you, and you can even tell us a little bit about your nose art there while we have it on the screen. Go ahead, guys. That's right. Well, I mean, we know from history, right? Low Armistead famously did that at the Battle of Gettysburg. There is a time and a place for some of that. And I would imagine that as a professor, go ahead. No sound at all on the stream. Oh no. Okay. What's the audio imp? All my audio capture things are working. Go ahead and say something, Justin. Yeah, it's not picking you up. Oh no. Yeah, I guess so. I guess so, right? Um, what is? It's not desktop audio, is it? Device not connected or not available. Okay, let's try that. Go ahead and say something, Justin.
Hello, hello.
Now you're
Can
working.
anyone hear me?
I told you
Okay.
that I had this whole thing messed up. Um, well, all right, Justin, go ahead and just give the recap. I apologize to the viewers, but go ahead and just
I will
give a
do
quick
my
recap.
best. Let's see. Why role playing Kriegsspiel? Well, firstly, in its original form as a training tool for the Prussian army, it always was roleplay. You always were talking. The Prussians weren't just saying if you are yourself. It wasn't just a tactical exercise without troops. It was if you are the major, if you are the colonel, if you are a general in that situation, in that role, what do you do here? Because it was
Hmm.
giving us a practice thinking in that role, not just what is the on paper best tactical thing to do. So it was always designed that way, and I think it's best treated that way as essentially a role playing game where you play the character that you are. You are the general, you're the brigadier, you're the divisional commander, you're the corps commander, and you take the assumption that you have that training as and command it as best you can,
Hmm.
as opposed to saying I am as opposed to being yourself. And so you means that you try and leave your own personal bias at the door. You try and command as that commander would, and that means you take orders that you personally don't always agree with, and you follow with discipline that, as a divisional commander or a brigade commander, you'd be expected to. And I feel that's the best way to approach it.
Yeah, this calls to mind. It's very insightful to role play, and I want to get into this. And I mention it now because I want to give Jan a moment to think on this before I get around to him. Because Jan and I had an interesting role play interaction some months ago in the Red v Blue campaign. Um, and we'll talk about.
And I was poking fun at both of you when I was saying that. Yes.
Yeah, we'll come around to that, but I want to allude to that or refer to that when we get to it. But first, I want to give Dave a chance to speak and ask his thoughts on roleplay. And Dave, do you use roleplay at all? I've seen you've run a lot of campaigns. You ran your Colchester campaign, um, a lot of stuff in the English Civil War. What are your thoughts? What are your takes? I'm not gonna lead
I
you.
would
I'll let
I
you.
would probably
Yeah.
broadly agree with Justin, that you want to really try and put yourself in, use your imagination and put yourself in the boots of a general in the saddle, really. Um, and you would have to really role play that at some degree. But obviously, Kriegsspiel is kind of, putting yourself in those shoes. But I mean, trying to understand the decisions that people made at the time. So yeah, I was Justin said it better than I ever could, I think. But yeah, I would say that.
Yeah. One of the
I
things that
also
I found when I played as my emperor self here was that you learn a lot about yourself. Here's the alt mark flag. I'm just kind of varying things so you guys aren't just looking at the same screen. Alt mark was one of the countries in our Red versus Blue campaign, which takes place in this fictional continent called Not Europe or Reeswelt. Actually, I think that's the name for the whole continent or planet, whatever. No difference. But Jan and I had this interaction where we were role playing our roles, and sometimes you can't help but get caught up into it. Um, Jan, I'll let you kind of speak generally if you want, and then if you want to get specific, absolutely. Go ahead.
Mhm. So I would approach that from a different level. So I agree with Justin and Dave, of course. Kriegsspiel is role playing by default, so to say, but you can add to that, and I think that provides an additional sort of challenge that you can include in the game if you sort of not try to think as what would you as yourself do if you were in command of these troops, but what if you were somebody else? How would this person think and approach these challenges? And that's I, at least that's what I feel is provides an additional insight into decision making, into perspectivity of perceived realities. I mean, that's what we are dealing with in the Kriegspiel, right? We get some sort of informations and we try to build a picture from these informations and make decisions based on what we believe is true or not.
Hmm.
If you then introduce, so to say, another factor that alters how you perceive these informations you receive, then it becomes a whole different game, right? So
Right.
I like this aspect, and on top on that, I think the role playing part can also be sort of inviting or pulling people in who are not primarily interested in the military aspect of it, right?
Hmm.
So if you
There's a
have,
level of immersion there, right?
yes,
Right.
absolutely. If you have sort of an interest of role playing, but not so much of the military history stuff, you can still play Kriegspiel and have a hell of a lot of fun playing that.
Absolutely.
As you can, of
100%.
course, if you are a sort of military history nerd and don't really are interested in role playing, you can play, of course, as well. But yeah,
Hmm. I
it adds a
agree.
layer.
Yeah, I do. I think it makes people take their decisions a little bit more seriously, and that brings me to well, I wanted to talk briefly about the interaction we had. We had this
Yeah.
interaction, right, where we were two adversarial sides in the red versus blue campaign, and it kind of everything came to a head, and we had a truce, and we had this meeting in this tent, right? That was how it played out. And then things went south very quickly, and people ended up getting stabbed and shot and so on because that's just what happens. But upon reflection, it's like, man, here I am. I'm inviting Jan to under flag of truce to a meeting, but really, I'm going to give him an ultimatum, and I'm not going to let him walk out. And that was kind of a dark thing to think about. Like I had this moment where it's like, would I do that in real life? You know,
Mhm.
whereas, and the justification that I made to myself was, we got to end the Civil War. We got to end this conflict. And if it means I have to do something a little underhanded, maybe that's the price I have to pay. And in short, it felt like self-sacrifice, even though the one I was really trying to sacrifice was you. But it taught me a little something about my character, and it gave me a moment, more than a moment, to reflect. Did you have a similar experience, Jan, or not?
Sure. I mean, sort of my character developed over time, over the campaigns we run, and
Hmm.
I was sort of bound to what the character was interested in or sort of decided to do, right? And the thoughts he had and the imagination of the world he wanted to create and such. And I would probably have, in real life, would have come to some sort of compromise with you, but as my character, I just couldn't because he was so determined to the political ideas he had and to make sure that the new constitution was held up and all that stuff. So he just couldn't agree with what you were offering, and
Hmm.
of
Well,
course, sort of like being kicked out of the game in quotation marks, like having your character die. Doesn't leave you untouched. I can tell you that if you've invested so many hours into the development of that character. But
Yeah.
after all, it's a learning experience, and was hell of a lot of fun. So yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead, Dave. Go ahead. Were you wanting
Oh,
to add to that, Dave? I thought you were
yeah, a
wanting
little
to add
bit.
to it.
No, I mean, I was actually just thinking because I mean I helped run that game, and I
Hmm.
was literally just thinking through the characters that I had to play by necessity to help with keep the ball rolling on certain topics. I mean I
Hmm.
think I played about four different characters in that
Right.
campaign.
The umpires actually have to role play a little too. Yeah, you don't have to fully develop the character. But yeah, I remember that meeting in the pub with the tattoo. And I'll just say that. I won't
Yeah,
go into more detail, but yeah, you had to kind of illustrate that and come up with, that shady character. Like, yeah,
yeah,
I'll do a job for you, but there's a
yeah.
price. But what fun! What fun! All of this kind of comes about because I'm running this bomber campaign. It's called the 805th Bombardment Group, and it's fictional. But it's set in World War II, and I've got a bunch of people here who have their little B-17 bombers. These are the names of the different bombers, and they are. As soon as this podcast is over, we're going to do another little mission, and they're going to fly this little mission, and people are really getting into the game because a lot of people have, they've done their nose art. I've been flashing art from Catastrophe up here, and Catastrophe was actually the first casualty. They were destroyed on their very first mission and didn't even get the chance to, I think, go and create their pretty nose art the right way, the way that Bad Penny and uh, the other one that I showed you, Whiskey Princess, looks. And it was kind of an emotional thing because I'm sitting there, I'm rolling these dice, I'm rolling these, 2d20s, so that there's basically like a 1 in 200 odds chance of something absolutely catastrophic happening. And of course, it has to happen on this one of these critical roles, and of course it happens. Here it is. Here's the entry. At 10:02, a massive explosion engulfs Catastrophe. She suffers a direct hit from flak. The craft disintegrates and flaming pieces fall towards the ground. That's what happens when you roll a 2 or a 3 on 2d20s. And that kind of hit me in the gut. And I know that the person who was playing Catastrophe, it got to them too. And I think if I go into their little bomber thing, you know, and yeah, there's the die result. And I was like, yeah, we're all we're all sad. But this is what happens when you role play. It causes emotional investment, and then that emotional investment changes your calculus. And let's see. I think Jan and Justin have. Well, Justin, you played right. What did you go through? I think in the first mission, was it, or the second mission? I
In
think it
the
was the
in the
first.
in the, in the first mission, we started flying, and suddenly one of our engines basically broke, uh, blew up, fell off. There was an explosion. The second engine started running weakly, and I just went, okay. If I was just playing the game to go get that target, I would go anyway. But I don't think I'm going to survive this. I'm
Mhm.
going. If I go in this, I'm not going to survive this. I have to play this as the captain. I have my crew. I don't want to turn back on the first mission before I've even got close to the enemy, but I've got to do it. I can't see. We're not going to crawl out on the wing. We're not over the target or anything. We have to go home.
Mhm.
And so we signaled we were going back, and we went back.
Mhm.
And
Eh,
then sat on the ground and stewed while our bloody crew chiefs tried to fix the parts, and everyone else went off to bomb Germany.
right? How did that feel? Was that kind of a bummer to have to sit one out?
Uh, I was role playing. I was
Mhm.
expressing
Mhm.
their frustration. I'm enough of a grognard that I don't. I'm happy being in reserve. I'm happy because it's a thing that needs to be done. If bad luck and bad parts happen, I will growl at the crew chief and I'll inspect my plane before we take off again. But I'll take my lumps and keep going.
Yeah. Well, there you go. Here's my little chart, if you will, that shows what we're. Oh, I guess I actually typed. No, I did type it right. Why doesn't it show up in here? Let's do that. There it is. Yeah, I'm showing my little spreadsheet now that shows uh, the results for everyone. Jan had a couple choices to make. He's flying organized confusion. I think originally you were just out of formation a time or two.
Yeah.
I don't think you've suffered any major malfunctions or issues, have you?
Not yet.
Not yet. And Dave, are you ready for this, Dave? Yeah, I've got you on this mission. You're flying today, man. So, yeah, everyone here is pretty nervous. Like, I can feel the nerves from the messages that people are communicating. I can feel that they're nervous. So you take a look at the mess hall, and
We also had a look at the mission plan.
yeah, well, and we've got Sam Miller of all people, who is really the unofficial mascot of the International Kriegsspiel Society. Sam Miller, legendary for his aggression. And if we take a look at the mission that he planned, I think he's like, oh, we're going to go in at 10,000 foot. We're going to hit this target at 10,000 feet. And I'm like, well, that's wow. I mean, if we're in the business of giving modifiers to the German flat guns, I guess we're going to do it. So that's what we're going to do. So there'll be some evasion. I mean, there was some protest here. You take a look at Chattanooga Choo Choo. That's Carter saying, "Hey man, this is crazy," and he's dropping some education in here, which is also part of the fun. But this is what you get when people are invested in a game. You get people who are going to the source materials, they're going into the history, they're reading, they're learning. It makes the experience more engaging and more educational. And that's why I think roleplay has a lot of value because it really adds this whole nother dimension to a game. So instead of playing a two-dimensional game, now you're playing a more three-dimensional experience. And it's something that's going to stick with you, and at times it will hit you in the gut, but that's what it's supposed to do. It can be emotional for people at times, it can be a challenge for people, but I also think it's an opportunity for people to learn about themselves. So, someone like Sam will probably learn something about himself as a result of this experience, as will the rest of you here, Justin, Dave, Jan, and of course myself as an umpire. I mean, there are some
I
times
was,
when yeah,
I was just going to say with the people finding evidence, I was impressed. Amelia, who's part of that, she
mm.
dug up some training videos for how to restart an engine in midair.
Well, I've had to look up some stuff too. I didn't expect myself looking up either. The fuel capacity, the endurance, the range, all of that stuff. But also, yes, some maintenance things because, well, I want to, give you guys actual maintenance issues, and I don't know if they can be solved in the air or not, but I want to give you factual, actual things that did or would have gone wrong, like the hydraulic issue. I think one of the planes had a hydraulic pump failure or something, and that forced them to make some early decisions. I know that what's his name here? Let's go back here. Guernica's Revenge. The rudder got stuck, and it wasn't, you know, he couldn't, he was able to manage the plane, but I gave him this decision where you're approaching for landing, you're off alignment with the runway. You could go around, try to counteract it with your engines, or attempt to use the rudder. And had he said, well, we'll give the rudder a try, I was going to do a pretty big die roll where he's probably just going to nose over and go into the ground. It would have been the end of the game. I even told him using the rudder probably, would have killed him. I would have left it to dice. But, yeah. And then, of course, I still had to roll to see how the landing went. But, yeah, it's sending me into the material as well. I'm going into the history books and learning as well. So that's kind of cool. Let's see here. Let's take a look quickly at the comments. Let's see here. Achilles says red versus blue does what Jan is talking about. Since you have not just a position, but you have a character that has a background and etc. And that's actually a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to kind of come up with that background and develop that character and all of that and interact and you write letters and so on and you make alliances and deals, all of those things. Uh, you know, Andrew says, "Yep, that's interesting," and agree with both how that can affect you due to commitment into the game. Yeah, it does. It gives you that emotional investment. And again, it stops you from pushing everything into the middle of the table. That's kind of a poker reference. If you've ever played poker with a person who doesn't really know how to play and they go all in every hand because they learn if they do that, everyone will fold and they get to steal the antes. They get to steal the pot and that only works until somebody has good cards. But it's no fun playing with that guy. And so I think to make the Kriegsspiel much more valuable, we've introduced this role play element because now there's stakes. And the longer people play, it's going to be really interesting to talk about how, as people get over here into mission 6, 7, and so on their way to 25, it's going to be really interesting to see the decisions that people make if they start making different decisions because I've invested all this time and energy and I just don't want to die because of something stupid. And that, wow, it's going to be interesting stuff. uh, Justin, before we close out, any closing comments on this? We'll do the round robin here.
Uh,
We'll go to Dave and Jan
no,
next.
I guess I'm literally everyone on this call and probably some of the audience are involved in my American Civil War Kriegsspiel at the moment, so I can't give too much detail, but I'm loving the roleplay that's already coming through some of the command meetings and the comms, and I think it's very much people getting invested into their roles over and above whatever the correct tactical decision is. And so it's great to see, and it makes it for the umpires as well, I think.
Yeah, it does. It enhances the fun for us. Really, the payoff for an umpire is you get to see everything that's happening, and it's like watching a soap opera when it's done right, and it's actually quite engaging. Like you're like, hurry up and send the letter already. You know, like hurry up and have the meeting. You're waiting for all the time zones on Earth to align so all the players can get together and have an interaction because you as an umpire want to sit there with your popcorn and watch it. It's a heck of a lot of fun, and that's why a lot of people just like to umpire. Dave, what are your closing thoughts here?
Oh, I don't know. I probably wanted to touch on, how as a player and when I role play, I like to put in a little bit of comedic value in there as well. But I mean, with regards to your bomber command game, I am, as you say, looking forward to see how that develops and you know people drop out of the sky, so to speak, and how that might affect things going forward. But yeah, I can't wait to play it. It's
Yeah.
gonna be fun, and I'm gonna see if I can inject some comedic value in there too.
You almost have to. Yeah, I love that is one of the features of how you run the show. I've noticed, Dave, and it is great. It's nice to have that comic relief. Again, you don't want to take yourself too seriously. You are still pursuing a hobby. I don't want to trivialize it and say, well, you're just playing a game. It is something a little bit more than that. It is a little bit deeper than that. It's a game, yes, but it's really something that you can use to kind of look at yourself, look at how you interact with people, kind of test
That's
yourself
right.
out, and all of this. And the humor just kind of, adds the seasoning to the dish, if you will, which I enjoy. Jan, what are your closing thoughts?
Well, I will probably add one more aspect that we've been talking about 2 weeks ago with the Jersey scenario. That you
Hmm.
can also sort of introduce uh, minimal sort of role playing or character attribute elements from the umpire side if you give the player those via the briefing and say, okay, you don't like this guy, now sort of try to deal with that in this military situation and sort of, I don't know, uh, make sure that the other commanders like follow you and not the other guy or something like that. And you can add additional friction into the game that adds to the experience of the players, which is quite interesting. And I'm really looking forward to dive more into that and use that in future scenarios.
Conflict resolution training.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah, you got it. All right, before we wrap up, I just want to remind people that our website is live and it's a fantastic resource. It's at Kriegsspiel.org. We have the first of our Kriegsspiel problems posted there. And we also have a live game coming up in Los Angeles on September 4th that I'm going to be running. We have a few members from the IKS who will be there to help assist running that game. And just check out this website. There are so many cool things here on the website that you can get lost in here for hours just checking out all of the neat stuff that we have. Everything Kriegsspiel, it's all here. A website like this has never been assembled before. And I especially want to point out that Jan, who's on this podcast, is the chief designer of this website. So Jan, brilliant work. It's a beautiful site, and I think that a lot of people are going to enjoy this resource for a long time to come. And finally, if anybody wants to support us, we do have our Kriegspiel store. It's called Kriegs Depot on Etsy. We even have an 805th Bomber Group mug that I've put up now. So there you go, the 805th Bomb Group with the little block, right? Because we don't use minis, do we? We've got that, and of course we have our Patreon. What I'm because I cleaned up my computer, I would have to go back and re-enter it. But we do have a Patreon page, and oh, it's right here. See, I can find it through our own resources, and you're also welcome to support us there. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. I want to thank Dave, Justin, and Jan for being here. I really appreciate you coming on the show and sharing your insights with our membership. And I want to thank all of you who are watching. Let's take a quick peek at the YouTube and see who we have there. If I can open it, there it is. Achilles and Andrew, good to see you. And all of you who are watching, I want to thank you for tuning in today. All right, that's all we have for now. It's time to go blow up some bombers. And, well, we will see you on the next adventure. Bye for now. Thank you.